Well, Russia's defence ministry says its troops have captured another 3 villages in the Ukrainian-occupied Kursk region. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said that Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk are almost completely encircled by Russian forces. Sources on both sides say that Russian special forces walked for several kilometres inside a gas pipeline in order to strike Ukrainian forces from behind. Now, these developments come days ahead of a planned meeting between US and Ukrainian delegates in Saudi Arabia aimed at brokering a ceasefire. For more, I'd like to welcome Charles Kupchan now. He is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and Professor of International Affairs at Georgetown University. Welcome to you, sir. Now, Ukraine clearly has a weaker hand going into these talks, but US President Trump keeps saying that Ukraine doesn't hold any cards at all. What do you make of that? Is that really true?
Well, in some ways, Zelensky holds all the cards in the sense that we won't get a deal if Zelensky isn't ready to make that deal. Yes, I think President Trump is twisting his arm. He's to some extent coercing Zelensky to say, yes, I'll sign the minerals deal. Yes, I will negotiate in good faith to get a ceasefire. But the bottom line is that Trump wants a deal. He wants to see this war end. And he can't get that outcome unless Zelensky agrees. And in that respect, we really are looking at a negotiation here, not a situation where Trump holds all the cards. And it's for that reason that in the end of the day, I think Trump is going to restart the flow of aid, restart intelligence, because he needs Zelensky on his side to get a deal.
Interesting. OK. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky says he's committed to dialogue and peace ahead of talks in Saudi Arabia. Where do you think security guarantees fit into this? Because they're important to Ukraine, but the US has been reluctant to firm up what this could look like.
Well, I think it's on this front that Zelensky is not going to get what he wants. He may get the minerals deal, he may get more aid, he's going to get Europe trying to increase its ability to support Ukraine. But he has said, I want NATO membership. And in return for a peace deal, I want that Article 5 guarantee. He's not going to get it because there's no consensus inside NATO to extend that guarantee. Especially with Trump in office, there is no willingness here in Washington to say, we guarantee the security of Ukraine. So in some ways, I think he's looking at alternatives, and they include the flow of aid, a perspective on ultimately joining the EU, and perhaps most importantly, the presence of some kind of peacekeeping monitoring force on the ground once you get a ceasefire, so that if Russia keeps coming in, they're going to have to kill Europeans or other peacekeeping troops that are standing in their way.
And do you think that's really something Russia would agree to?
I think it kind of depends on the nature of that force. If it were to be purely European, I think the Russians would object. I could imagine some kind of multilateral force under a UN or OSCE umbrella that would contain not just European forces, but perhaps Indians, Chinese, and others, so that it at least looks to be a neutral mediating force that keeps the two sides apart and monitors what will hopefully be some kind of demilitarized zone between Russian and Ukrainian forces.
Let's talk about Russia a bit more, because on Friday, Donald Trump also threatened to tighten sanctions on Russia if it didn't come to the table. What do you make of that?
You know, I think the bottom line here is that everybody's focused on Zelensky and his willingness to make a deal. The harder party here is Russia, right? Zelensky knows that he's not going to win this war. Zelensky knows that time is not on his side. He has an interest in trying to stop the killing and turn the 80% of Ukraine that is still free into a success story. Whether the Russians are ready to go for that kind of outcome, we don't know. Mr. Putin and his top aides continue to talk about expansive war aims, pulling Ukraine back into a Russian sphere of influence, toppling the government in Kyiv. In that respect, I think Trump is being realistic here when he says we may need to impose sanctions on Russia. We may need to twist not just Zelensky's arm, but Putin's arm as well.
Thank you very much for your insights. That was Charles Kupchan, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.